You know that feeling sometimes. Like you just want to cut through all the noise, get past the surface stuff, and really understand what's actually going on, not just out there, but in here.
Oh, absolutely. That desire to go deeper, find some clarity when everything feels so complex. Yeah, I think that's something a lot of us feel. It's pretty fundamental, I'd say.
It really is.
Yeah.
And today, we're going to dig into a really interesting approach to that inner understanding. It's a concept from our source material called Hitbodedut.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might translate that as, solitude or isolation, maybe, but it's actually much more about cultivating this really profound inner awareness.
Yep.
It's not just about being physically alone.
Exactly. Not just locking yourself away. We're looking at this through the lens of Rabbi Itamar Schwartz's teachings, specifically from a recent YouTube video he put out.
Right.
The Hebrew title is Elos of Evil 11, Itzok 11, Kaltada Silto,
Okay.
which translates roughly to Know Your Solitude 011, The Power of External and Internal Innocence, Rabbi Itamar Schwartz.
Got it.
Yeah.
So our goal here isn't just, a general chat about prayer or feeling grateful. We want to really get under the hood, understand the core purpose of this inner solitude, this Hitbodedut, and, well, how we might actually nurture it, going beyond the basics.
And what's really striking right at the outset is the foundational idea.
Yeah.
The ultimate point of, well, everything, of all existence, but especially for us humans, is to recognize the Creator.
Wow, okay.
The source puts it very powerfully. It basically says that the whole purpose of life is for the created being to come to know the one who brought it into existence. That recognition, that deep knowing, that's the culmination.
That definitely reframes things. So it's not just like ticking a box, yep, acknowledge the Creator. It's something much, much deeper.
Oh, far deeper. The source really stresses that this knowing needs to be rooted deep inside us. It has to become part of our very being, how we experience reality. And inner solitude, Hitbodedut, well, that's the space, the kind of inner workshop where that deep awareness is forged.
Right, the place you do the work.
Exactly. It's the inner work that lets that seed of understanding really grow.
Okay, so if recognizing the Creator is the destination, what are maybe the tools or the inner capacities we need to get there? You mentioned the video talks about a kind of ladder.
Yes, exactly. It views all the other parts of spiritual practice, prayer, study, good deeds, the commandments, all of it as steps on that ladder. They're the way we climb up to that inner place of recognition.
So they're means, not the end goal itself.
Precisely. They're vital for creating the right inner conditions. And the video specifically highlights two sort of fundamental powers within the soul that are absolutely key for this recognition.
Okay, let's break those down. What are these core powers?
The first one is purity of the heart, tahara is the Hebrew term, and the second is this really interesting concept, the power of innocence, or timimus.
Purity and innocence. Okay, let's start with purity of heart, tahara.
Right. So the source makes it clear this isn't just something you try to achieve, during your quiet time alone. It's an ongoing thing.
Right.
It's cultivated by how we live our entire life, especially through observing the commandments, the mitzvot.
Okay, so how do the mitzvot, the commandments, actually build that inner purity?
Yeah.
It feels like it must be more than just, rule following.
Definitely more. Both types are important. The positive commandments, the mitzvot aset, things you do, the source mentions there are 248 of them.
Uh-huh.
And the negative commandments, the mitzvot lo tasa, things you refrain from doing there are 365 of those.
Okay.
So the positive actions are seen as bringing more, let's call it spiritual light into your being. And avoiding the negative ones helps keep you clear of things that cloud your inner vision, spiritual impurities. It's like, well, tending an inner garden, planting the good stuff, weeding out the bad.
That's a great analogy. And the video also mentioned refining character traits. Our midat is part of this, something with the foreskin of the heart. That sounds intense.
It's a powerful image, isn't it? The source talks about working on our character, overcoming things like anger, jealousy, arrogance, and cultivating kindness, patience, humility. It's like removing a barrier, that foreskin of the heart, carious that blocks the heart's natural purity. Peeling back the layers that obscure our true selves.
So it's deep internal work, not just outward actions. How do we actually do that? Refine our traits?
Well, the key, according to the video, is consistent self-reflection. Like really honestly looking at ourselves, our strengths, yes, but also our weaknesses. Where do we habitually mess up? And then consciously working on those areas. It's not a one-time fix, obviously. It's a continuous process. And the idea is as you chip away at the negative traits, that inherent purity of the heart starts to shine through more clearly.
Okay, that clarifies tahara, purity of heart. Now let's get into that second power, innocence. Demeanus. You said this one is even more central.
It seems to be presented that way, yes. While purity of heart kind of prepares the soil, the source says it's this power of innocence, Temimut, that actually allows the purity to be fully revealed and felt.
Oh.
It even brings a verse, something like, the primary force that reveals purity is the power of innocence in the soul. Be wholehearted or innocent with God like a weaned child with its mother.
Wow, that image.
Yeah.
A weaned child with its mother. There's such complete trust there, such simplicity. So this inner innocence is the real key to feeling that connection.
That seems to be the core message. Purity clears the path, but innocence is like the open, trusting heart that can actually receive the connection, receive the divine presence.
Okay.
The source really emphasizes this. It says, if you try to practice inner solitude, Hitbodedut, but you kind of skip over cultivating this inner innocence, you're missing the main gateway.
You're missing the entrance.
Right. It explicitly says something like, the more innocent you are, the more you are with God. It's that essential doorway.
This is fascinating. But okay, how do we actually do that? As adults, we've seen things, we've got baggage, complexities. How do we cultivate innocence? It feels like something maybe we lose.
That's a really important question, and the video tackles it head on. It argues that this isn't about trying to, acquire something new from the outside.
Right.
It's suggesting this core innocence is actually already in us. It's our natural state, something we had as children, that weaned child idea again, but it just gets covered over by life, by experiences, by cynicism.
So it's more like uncovering something.
Exactly, like finding a buried treasure that was yours all along.
I like that. We all remember that kind of unburdened way kids see things. But the video distinguishes between different types of innocence, doesn't it?
Yes, that's crucial. It differentiates between what you might call a negative innocence, which is more like being naive, gullible, easily fooled. The Hebrew term used is something like leisue, the simpleton who believes everything.
Okay, so not that.
Yeah. Not that. Versus the positive, pure innocence, a holy innocence, or only in being wholehearted with God. That's the goal. It's not about being clueless. It's about a deep, sincere trust and wholeheartedness.
Got it. Aiming for authentic simplicity, not naivete. Okay, so practically speaking, how do we tap into this pure innocence that's supposedly buried inside?
Right. So the video gives 4 main methods to kind of awaken it, arouse it. The first one is about identifying moments, maybe from your past, maybe even recent ones, where you did experience a flash of genuine innocence. Even if the situation turned out badly or maybe the innocence felt, misdirected. The point is to recognize the value of that core feeling, that innocent intention, and not just be cynical because of how things played out.
So like honoring the pure motive, even if the application was flawed.
Exactly. Don't dismiss the innocence itself just because it got tangled up in something messy.
That's a really interesting way to reframe things. Okay, what's the second method?
The second is to actively reconnect with your childhood self. This could mean, looking at old photos, thinking back to specific memories, or even just trying to evoke the feeling of being a child in your mind.
Okay.
The aim is to emotionally reconnect with that time, that place in your soul, where innocence felt more natural, more accessible, to kind of remember what it felt like.
That makes a lot of sense. Childhood often has that sense of wonder. Method number 3.
Number 3 involves stories. Reading or hearing stories about great spiritual figures, righteous people from the past or even present, who were known for their deep innocence and sincerity.
Learning from examples.
Right. By kind of immersing yourself in their qualities, observing how they lived with that innocence, it can awaken something similar in you, finding those role models.
Okay. And the fourth one, you said it was maybe the most profound.
Yeah. The fourth method is deep contemplation. Specifically, contemplating the nature of the Creator and really grappling with the fact that God is ultimately beyond our full understanding, infinite, limitless. By meditating on this, on the sheer incomprehensibility of the divine, it naturally fosters a state of, innocent faith, a deep trust in God's actions, even when we can't figure them out.
Because you recognize your own limits.
Precisely. The video says the more you contemplate this, the more you bring it into your heart, the more you kind of unearth and establish that deep hidden innocence within you. It's fueled by faith, by recognizing something infinitely greater than your own intellect.
So 4 ways. Recognizing past innocence, reconnecting with childhood, learning from the righteous, and contemplating the divine's limitlessness. What's the payoff? What does cultivating this innocence actually bring us?
Well, the most direct reward, according to the source, is a deeper, more real connection with the Creator. That's the primary goal. But it also leads to living life with more simplicity. Penyet is the word used.
Simplicity, meaning
Meaning less anxiety, less worry about being tricked or needing to constantly be on guard, because you have this underlying trust in God's guidance. It contrasts this with a life lacking that faith, which often demands more cunning, more suspicion, more self-protection, all of which kind of erode that inner innocence.
so it's a shift from maybe defensiveness to openness,
Yeah.
from fear to trust.
Beautifully put, yes. And there's an emotional component too. Does it feel good?
Yeah, what's the feeling?
Absolutely. The video talks about reaching this place of inner innocence, leading to a real love and enjoyment of that state, like how we naturally delight in the pure innocence of a young child.
Right, that feeling is universal.
Exactly. And true inner solitude, his Bodhis, happens when your inner self resides in that place of innocence. Then all your expressions towards God, gratitude, prayer, love, they just flow naturally from that pure source.
Like it's your home base.
Yes. It mentions the example of the Chaffetz chime, a famous sage known for spending hours daily in his Bodhidus, and suggests his practice was deeply rooted in this kind of childlike, pure innocence.
So this really drives home that inner solitude isn't just about scheduling quiet time. It's about finding a specific place inside yourself.
Exactly that. The video is very explicit. Inner solitude isn't just an action, it's a location within the soul. And that location is the realm of innocence. It says, the place in the soul called his Bodhidus is the place of Temimut. Innocence is the place of inner solitude.
Wow. They're synonymous in that sense.
It seems so. And it connects this to the biblical Jacob, Yaakov. He was called Ishtam, often translated as a complete or wholehearted or innocent man.
Right, the man of integrity.
Yes. And there's a verse about Jacob being left alone, which the sages connect to God being alone, accompanies. The video uses this to say that the place of being alone with God, his Bodhidus, is found in that quality of tam, of innocence.
Which might explain why just being physically alone doesn't always cut it if you haven't found that inner place of innocence.
It's like trying to find solitude in a noisy marketplace, as the video suggests. You're physically alone, but your inner world isn't in that state of innocent quietude.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Now, thinking about today's world, it often feels pretty chaotic, confusing. How does this ancient idea of inner innocence and solitude fit in now?
The video actually argues it's particularly relevant now. It describes our era as one of sort of spiritual confusion, where lines get blurred. And interestingly, it connects this to a trend away from huge national wars towards more individual internal struggles, conflicts within and between people.
Like the battles are becoming more personal.
That's the idea presented. It quotes something suggesting that this generation is one where the Jacob being left alone dynamic is playing out, sometimes negatively in isolation, but for those who cultivate holiness, it's a time where the God-alone connection can be deeply realized. It explicitly calls our time a generation of his Bodhidus.
So paradoxically, the challenges of our time might actually make this inner path more accessible or necessary.
That's exactly the perspective. The source suggests that because our inner lives feel more individual now, building that internal world, that inner solitude, is crucial for navigating everything. It's like building your own inner sanctuary of peace.
A base to operate from.
Precisely. A place from which you can then engage with the world more positively, but you need that solid inner foundation first, built through solitude.
And he uses that stark image, too, about our ultimate aloneness.
Yes, the metaphor of being alone in the grave. Sars Kame Kruffelme is a person truly alone in the grave. It's a bit grim, maybe. But the point is that our spiritual journey is ultimately individual. We need to prepare for that ultimate aloneness now by cultivating this inner solitude.
So building that inner resilience.
Right. It suggests the true dawn, the redemption, comes after navigating this period of individual challenge, this Jacob wrestling alone until dawn. We need that inner strength to make it through. While community helps, we each need that core self-reliance built in solitude.
Okay, now the focus shifts a bit in the video, right? It talks about how this innocence doesn't actually lead to more isolation, but to a desire for connection.
Exactly. It's a beautiful turn. The source explains that when you tap into that inner power of Temimut, of innocence, it actually creates this deep yearning for connection, specifically with the Creator. It's not isolating at all.
How does that work?
He uses the analogy of a child again. A young child, in their natural innocence, constantly wants to be with their parents, right? They don't want to be left alone.
Absolutely. Always seeking closeness.
So the video says, Clash, don, clap, flap, flap, ba, kappa. When a person has this power of innocence, it compels them to want to be with their source. Just like the baby physically needs its parents, when this holy innocence awakens spiritually, it creates this constant longing to be with the Creator.
That's a powerful contrast to how we often feel as adults, maybe a sense of separation even when we're physically with people. It's not that same constant pull.
Precisely. We connect as adults, sure, but often in more functional, maybe superficial ways sometimes. It's not that deep, unwavering need a child shows. And the video stresses that the inner solitude aimed at connecting with God. It needs to come from that place.
From the childlike place of needing connection, not the adult place of, say, networking.
Exactly. It explicitly says, don't approach connecting with God from the same place you connect with other people. Go back to that deep, innocent place where you connect with your parents as a small child. That's the starting point for connecting with the Creator.
And connecting from that place makes the desire for connection constant, not just during designated prayer times.
That's the idea. It fosters a continuous longing, an undercurrent throughout your day.
Okay, so how do we access that specific mode of innocence for connection? The video talks about two general approaches, right? External and internal.
Yes. The external path involves consciously using those triggers we talked about, memories, photos, trying to recall the feeling of childhood innocence. The advantage is you're tapping into a time when innocence was already active, maybe easier to reawaken. But there are potential downsides.
Like what?
Well, you might accidentally reawaken other less helpful, immature aspects of your childhood self. Also, that childhood innocence was directed at your parents, so you need an extra step to redirect it towards the Creator. And, our experiences with parents weren't always perfect, so that initial innocence might have gotten complicated.
So it's a useful tool, but needs careful handling and refinement. What about the internal path?
The internal path is about awakening the power of innocence directly, kind of bypassing the specific childhood memories, focusing on the inherent quality itself.
How is that different?
The advantage is it's potentially pure. It's tapping into an innocence that hasn't already been directed or possibly distorted by early experiences. The source describes this as the very root of the soul, especially the Israelite soul, linking it back to Jacob, Ishtam.
So it's more fundamental.
It's presented as the innate core innocence, the internal, clean, pure, strong innocence. It suggests while external innocence might be universal, this deep internal innocence is a core aspect of the soul. The challenge, though, it can be harder to access directly. It requires deeper inner work, perhaps.
So one uses the paths as a bridge, the other tries to tap the source directly. Any other methods mentioned for awakening this connection-focused innocence?
Just briefly, it touches on things like repeating verses about innocence with real feeling, or reading wisdom texts that reveal the deep innocence of righteous figures, similar to the earlier points, but focus specifically on fueling that desire for connection.
And the result of all this accessing innocence via either path is that deeper, more palpable connection with the Creator, doing solitude and hopefully beyond.
That's the aim. But then the discussion takes another important turn, linking this innocence to how we actually live day to day through something called innocent faith.
Okay, innocent faith. This sounds vital for dealing with the messy reality of the world we were talking about. What does that involve?
It means really internalizing the idea that the Creator is constantly, completely orchestrating everything. Even though we have minds, we make plans, we act, ultimately everything unfolds within this larger divine wisdom.
Accepting there's a bigger picture we don't fully see.
Exactly. The video uses the simple example of planning your next day. You can schedule everything perfectly, but whether it actually happens that way, well, that's not entirely up to you, is it?
Definitely not.
And it scales this up. Long-term plans, world events, conflicts. Trying to make sense of it all purely through human logic hits a wall pretty quickly. It mentions Rabbi Nachman of Coburn saying you need faith just to walk out your door.
It really fosters humility about our own control, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But wait, what about free will? If everything's orchestrated, where does our choice come in?
The classic question. The video addresses this directly. It clarifies. We absolutely have the power to choose good over bad, right action over wrong action. That choice is real. Okay. However, the actual outcome, how things play out in the world as a result of our choices and countless other factors, that's in the Creator's hands. The analogy used is preparing to wake up for morning prayers. You have to make the effort, set the alarm, have the intention, but the actual waking up, that's ultimately from God.
So do your part, make the right choice, Put in the effort,
Yeah.
and then trust the results.
Exactly. Surrender the outcome after you've done your best. This fosters deep humility, which circles right back to reinforcing that inner innocence.
Okay, I think I get the dynamic.
Yeah.
But if everything's orchestrated, including the hard stuff, the suffering,
Yeah.
how do you feel good about that? How do you find peace?
That's the heart of it, isn't it? The video brings in a teaching from the Kotzker Rebbe. A God you can fully understand isn't God. Our minds are limited. We can't grasp the full divine picture. So the feeling of good, the inner peace, doesn't come from understanding why everything happens the way it does. It comes from recognizing the Creator's hand in everything, even the difficult things, and trusting that there is an ultimate wisdom and purpose, even if it's hidden from us.
Trusting the orchestrator, not necessarily the current tune.
Perfect. That recognition, that trust is the essence of the innocent faith being discussed. The whole teaching, ultimately, is aiming to cultivate that state of innocent trust, which lets you navigate life, the good and the challenging, with a foundation of inner peace.
Wow. That's a lot to take in, but it hangs together beautifully. So, just to recap this deep dive, the real point of Hitbodedut in a solitude isn't just quitting time, it's about achieving this profound recognition of the Creator.
Right. And the pathway there is through cultivating our own inner innocence, which itself relies on purity of heart through mitzvah and character work and developing this deep inner stillness or simplicity. Temimut.
And we talked about those 4 ways to awaken innocence. Seeing it in our past, reconnecting with childhood, learning from the righteous, and contemplating God's infinitude.
Exactly. And how that awakened innocence naturally leads to this constant underlying desire for connection, like a child seeks a parent, changing how we relate to the divine. And finally, how this all culminates in living with innocent faith, trusting in the divine orchestration, even amidst life's complexities.
It really paints a picture of transforming our inner world. So for you, listening right now, here's something to mull over. How might consciously trying to cultivate this inner innocence, maybe using one of those methods, actually shift your perspective on your daily life, the challenges you face, your connection to something bigger? Just take a moment sometime and consider that place of innocence inside you. What might happen if you spent more time there? It could be, well, quite the journey.